But here, on the very rim of known space, justice is a long way away.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Space Game Junkie podcast. I, as always, am your co-host, Brian, and joining me, as always, is your co-host, Spaz.
Hello.
Your co-host, Julie.
Hi, from the place with all the governors in jail.
Your co-host, Thorsten.
Hello.
Your co-host, Jacob.
I had like 3 quotes for today, but I realized all of them are not age appropriate.
Oh, that's fine. And your co-host, David.
Hey. Oh, Dave here.
What was that? Oh, you're cutting out a little bit, buddy.
Oh, no.
I told you to get that new mic. Anyway, sorry. Friends, welcome. We have a guest this week joining us from the UK, Steve Hunt of Cold Beam Games, to talk about the latest in the awesome and successful series of Beat Hazard games, Beat Hazard 3, which comes out into early access, I believe, next week, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
That's right, yeah, Monday the 14th. Yeah.
How you doing?
I'm doing good, thanks. Pretty stressed. Trying to get everything sorted out for release. But yeah, no, I think it's all going well. Seems to be all right.
Oh, that's great. We have thank you for the keys. We have been spending a good amount of time playing the new one, and hot damn, is this new one a leap and a jump from the other. The other two were, I'm not going to say simpler, but they were more, just strictly arcade games. Whereas this one, holy mackerel.
Yeah, I've ported the game to Unreal Engine, so now everything's properly 3D. Which because all the first two were sprite based. So the looks are. I think it looks a lot better. Obviously, because the game's a lot about lighting. Obviously, having proper 3D models and shadowing makes it look a lot nicer. And then on that, like say on the other side of things, I've sort of ended up because a lot of people always used to say Beat Hazard would be great with some sort of campaign mode, and I think it was all the way back in Beat Hazard 1, I kept thinking, yeah, some sort of campaign mode would be really good, but I wasn't sure how it would work. And then I remember one day there was this sort of like idea that formed was like, hang on a minute, music can sort of be mapped to a galaxy where you've got an artist is a cluster of stars, a star is an album, and the planets around the star are the tracks. And then I suddenly thought, oh, actually, yeah, that's pretty intriguing as a way of mapping music to something sort of more physical and explorable. And I knocked that idea around with a few people while I was, developing Beat Hazard 2, and everyone was like, yeah, that sounds good. And then obviously it was like, well, how do you make that happen? And it was like, well, as a sort of strictly 2D game, you could do it, but this is where when sort of Unreal came along, because I originally ported game to Unreal just so I could do a VR version. It was like, right, if I take it this direction, I've got to go sort of 3D, and obviously Unreal's there to do all this stuff really well. And that's what I ended up doing. Is almost building, I guess, almost a strategy game around the base twin stick shooter. So the game's sort of getting what was originally a relatively simple, twin stick shooter with music has sort of started to balloon out with more features and a deeper sort of gameplay. So yeah, I think it's working.
So did the switch to 3D via the Unreal Engine give you the idea for making the ships a bit foldable? Is that where that came from, or is that a thing? I don't remember if that was a thing from the earlier games.
No, it wasn't. But what did fold was the boss system for Beat Hazard 2 was a procedurally generated bosses made out of all these pieces. And when the boss comes in, I wanted it sort of folded up and then it unfolds. And that all it is that code applied to the player ship pretty much. And I just did it for a bit of fun. It was like, well, what happens if you fold my own ship? And it looked so cool. I was like, I've got to use this for something. And obviously, this is game design. How it works is you don't tend to sort of fully design a game and then make it. There's lots of things that just come to mind as you sort of developing and go, oh. And that's where Dark Beam came in then, which is like, fold your ship up, which was really handy for dodging stuff. But it felt a bit more, maybe I can do more with this. That's where the Dark Beam came in, and the shields were like, well, have a Dark Beam that can do something new. And this, so it's like, well, let's use it to take down shields. And also you can destroy incoming energy weapons, which with the first two beat hazards, you just had to dodge those. There wasn't really anything else you could do with them, or put your shield up. So now there's like, suddenly introduced a whole new sort of play system into the game. Just because, I got a bit of fold code and applied it to the player ship instead of the boss ship.
Yeah, I didn't know that folding could shoot the particle weapons with the dark beam. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, that caught a lot of people out because there's in fact, I actually put some code in that if there's a boss with shields on and you don't fold your ship within 10 seconds, it actually just flashes the text over the top saying, fold your ship to take down the shields. Because I know, because a lot of people, if they play beat has 1 and 2, are probably going to go in there and you're not going to realise that you can do that, even though it's in the instructions somewhere. Obviously, you don't tend to read all that to start with. So yeah, there's some sort of in-game prompts to try and help people figure that out.
Yeah, there would be the expectation for those who played the first two, definitely, to just pound it with your weapons and notice that it's not doing a thing.
Shoot thing until thing dies is a tried and true gaming tradition.
Cyber Demon reference.
I mean, but no, I really like I really like the new folding ability. It definitely adds a nice, fun wrinkle to the gameplay, which I'm going to use a lot more now that I know it takes out particle weapons, because I was just trying to dodge them, like in the other games.
Yeah. I mean, in fact, today I was just literally doing the instructions for the game, so they'll be in game, so you can sit and read about it, because it's things like instructions sort of can get left to the last minute, which I have sort of done, but. Yeah, it'd be a shame if people, just that one little bit of information can make a big difference on how well you can play the game. So I need to try and get that across to people coming into it.
Yeah, because I'm gonna play more now that I know I can do that.
Well, particularly those, I don't know if you've seen there's like massive like photons now, which are bigger than you are. And if you can't, using dark beam to take those down is pretty easy, but if you're actually trying to dodge them all the time, it can be a bit of a nightmare. It should make it a bit easier now. Yeah,
no, I appreciate that there are more tools in the toolbox for the player, which I really like. So how did you come up with the programming to make the map happen? Because it's very elegant. Like, I've been using it with my local tracks, and it's just it works so well. And I just want to know what kind of challenge that was putting that together.
The actual galaxy. Well, the way have you heard of MD5 hash?
No, I have not.
There's hashing, so you can take it's a really old algorithm. You can take any piece of text or any bit of data, shove it through an MD5 hash, and it produces a 64 character code. And if you change just one little thing, this is used for cryptography, by the way. If you change even one letter in that, and what you put in, you get a completely different code. So what the game does, it takes the title of the track and the duration and the artist, shoves that into an MD5 hash. You get basically a load of garbage numbers out, but then I use that to then map it to a position in a galaxy. So I then turn that into a number, say for example between 0 and 100, and you say, well, 0 is in the middle and 100 is on the edge, and then you get another 100, and then you get another bit and say let's do it from say 0 to 360 degrees. So that tells you what angle you're at. So then you get sort of a distribution of artists within a circle. And then I apply. I don't know if you've seen it when you change the form of the galaxy. I pinch that distribution to then form arms and then twist it. So it's actually, I don't know if I'm making it sound complicated, but it's actually not that crazily complicated, the whole thing. And I was really pleased with how it worked because, like you say, it's one of these things that initially I'm like, well, how do you take a whole load of arbitrary artists and make it into a uniform looking galaxy? But yeah, the reason it works so well is because this MD5 hash is essentially random. So you can then, it doesn't really matter what you put in, you get a nice even distribution out, which you can then map into a galaxy form. Does that make sense?
It does. To me, at least, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. So no, it does make sense. Mostly. They mostly come out at night. Mostly. No,
I hate that.
No, I can't. I mostly get it. I just think it does it so well. It does such a great job of taking all this disparate data. Like, because I don't have all my, because not all. I pulled in my local tracks and they don't all have artists. All these like MP3s I ripped from game CDs like 30 years ago don't have artists in meta tags and stuff. But it still did a really good job of pulling all that information, even from files that don't have that data, into a very believable galaxy that I had fun flying around with my mothership. And I also... Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say there's definitely some improvements to be made because there's sometimes you can end up with a whole load of stars with one planet around them. And I sort of wanted to put some code in that scoops those together. So instead of having loads and you might have 50 stars all with one planet.
I did notice that. Yeah, I did notice a couple of those.
I wanted to do sort of like a sweep through the galaxy after it's done it, and then collect up any sort of if there's too many sort of one planet systems, sort of scoop those together. Because a few other people said the same thing. They've got a lot of music which doesn't have album data. So I was going to have another checkbox that sort of said ignore albums and make your own. What it would do is it would sort of make pseudo albums. It would, if an artist got 100 tracks, for example, it could gather those up in some fashion and just make its own sort of albums from that data. And it's interesting because you think, I've got my own music collection. I think, this is representative of what everyone else uses, and then you find out that there's people that listen to say loads of Japanese style music, and they just have a completely different format, and they don't even really use albums. And I was like, didn't expect that. So yeah, there's a bit of tweaking to be done on that algorithm, but it shouldn't be too big a deal.
Yeah,
sort some stuff out.
Yeah, like for me, I've got everything organized by folder, and like for example,
right.
With the tracks I imported, I have the tracks organized by game, because it's my game soundtrack series. So like I've got the Assassin's Creed folder, and in that Assassin's Creed series folder, I've got all the Assassin's Creed soundtracks. So I don't even organize by album or artist. I organize by game.
That's what somebody did ask for that, saying, can you use the folder name instead of the metadata? Which would be doable as well.
Oh, great.
Yeah, because and I think that moving forward, this is the interesting thing, again, like early access, is to find out how people organize their music, because I sort of start with the assumption that everyone will have it like me for some reason. I'd be like, each folder's got an artist, and then you bang the albums in there. But some people go, I've just got it all in one folder. I've got 30 gigs worth of music in a single folder.
Oh God, no.
Yeah.
Oh God, No. I could not do that. Oh, how do you? No. How do you find any? Okay.
Subfolders at least, please.
Yeah, just something, just alphabetical by whatever. I don't know, something.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if that sounds like something you could add, that would be terrific. Because I've got everything organized by folder.
Definitely.
Because I noticed there are, like you said, a lot of people I know who have PCs. They can organize things by folder or by artist. But I noticed a lot of people who have Macs. They organize stuff by artist, and then playlist, because it's a different beast over there, on Macs. So giving people options is great, and you already have so many.
And admittedly, I do find it interesting that you've managed to make external programs work well enough.
Like Spotify.
Yes, I use Spotify extensively because my dad decided to pick music producer as his midlife crisis, and he got a family-sized Spotify subscription. So I went, sorted. I guess I'll use it. So that's where all my music is, and I was genuinely worried when I first saw the game. Well, literally 98% of my music is on Spotify. How the hell do I make this work? And apparently there's an open mic mode, which is serviceable.
Yeah.
Open mic mode has been in for quite a while, since 2, right?
Yeah.
You
It was in 2. And the big, because this is the big thing with obviously you got a music driven game, and with Beat Hazard 1 it was MP3s forever. And then came to do Beat Hazard 2 a few years later. I'm like, oh, I mean, you got some people don't even know what an MP3 is because they just stream. And it was like, is this game gonna just die? Because people. That was a big worry for me. I was like, well, I need to try and figure out a way of addressing that. And one of the things that most people don't know is that you sort of assume that you could just integrate Spotify. I've had so many emails saying, why don't you just integrate Spotify? And the thing is, if you're a commercial product, there's just no way. There's lots of, you can apply to Spotify to do it properly. But if you're a little indie game like I am, and I've seen lots of other games try and integrate Spotify, they're just not interested, which is fine. Their
API is apparently notoriously difficult to work with.
Yeah, well, but then you've also got the fact that not everyone uses Spotify. There's loads of people that hate it, and they go, I use YouTube, I use my Apple. And the amazing thing was, I sort of stumbled across this little app that could listen in on what's coming out of your speakers. Like, it intercepts the output, and then you can grab it. And I was like, no way! And it's just part of Windows. I never even knew. And that's when we Beat Hazard 2. That's where Open Mic came from. It's just a system where you go, just listen to what's coming out of the speakers, essentially, and then play to that. So although it's a bit clunky, admittedly, but the upside to it is you can use anything. It doesn't matter what streaming service it is, whether it's YouTube or which is the great thing about it. And then I discovered.
Anything that the thing will actually recognize, which isn't always a guarantee, but unless you're going for like really obscure stuff, it should work.
Yeah. This ACR is basically Shazam. It's like Shazam, but someone else has done it. And the game fingerprints the track, the first few seconds of the track, sends it off to a server, and then it goes, right, it's this song, but it's not 100%. And obviously, because it's only the first few seconds, you might get a lot of songs that are different length but all start the same. So it can go wrong. But
for some reason, I remember I had a couple of issues where a song was detected properly, but for some reason kept playing for the mission kept playing for 10 to 15 seconds after the song had ended properly.
Yeah. So there's a few issues like that. Yeah,
that's the most jank I would I've seen from that.
Can I just say, I found perhaps an unusual use for the open mic thing, because here's the problem is, now, while I am not photosensitive to the point where I will have seizures I had a headache within the first few minutes, and I couldn't find a way to turn off the strobing lights. And then it occurred to me, I can turn on the open mics and then shut the mic off. And so I could just enjoy the game otherwise. And but I do wish there was a way to shut. I understand that's the whole point of the game, but as a shooter, I really enjoy the game. But what we talked about this before the show, David and I got this from him, and he said that no, I just used the music that came with the game, but if I had spent more time with that, I would have used my own music. And he said that, well, when you die, that resets the music. And my first thought was, nobody interrupts a Keith Richards guitar riff for anything. And I would like to see that option, you know. And I said, just keep playing the music. And I understand the photosensitive thing is just my problem, but I wish there was some kind of adjustment with the game that
in the settings. Sorry, when you play a track on the farthest right hand side, there is a visual intensity setting which you can turn down to 50%. Did you try that?
No, I didn't. I did not see that it was there. So I just, and also what I do appreciate was the fact that as I have been accused of being before a filthy casual gamer, although I'm not necessarily a dirty person, but I appreciate there was a difficulty setting. And after seeing in the chat here about difficulty and turning it way up, I said, I'm going to start it out with casual and just enjoy myself. And I really appreciated that.
Well, I mean, you've hit a couple of nails on the head there. One is, this game is supposed to be you enjoying your music and shooting to it. Now, if the visual feedback's too much, then, I mean, there is a way of turning it down. But if you turn it down and it's still a problem, let me know, because I'm sort of used to it being on full. So when I play it on minimum, I sort of go, it looks a bit rubbish, but it might to some other people be too much. So I'd like to try and get that sorted, because I don't want to exclude. I mean, yeah, the game is about crazy visuals to music, but I don't really want to exclude anyone from playing it in a way they want to play it. And secondly was like the difficulty. I mean, there is a chill out mode where you just get infinite lives. I mean, your scores don't get submitted to the leaderboard, but you just play, and it's dying doesn't matter, and you just go through the track and enjoy yourself. And this is the whole point of the game. It's supposed to be fun to music. And fun to some people is it being rock hard, and fun to other people is I don't want to be stressed. I want to just shoot things and enjoy myself, and
yes,
and that's it. So I need to get that balance right. If it's not,
I'm happy. I don't need to have the strobing lights. I'm happy with just playing a shooter that I have fun with at the casual setting and listening to ZZ Top, Lagrange.
Inherently respectable.
Yeah. And to further the point, the game itself shouldn't be a barrier to that. So it's good that this is being brought up before the early access starts. Yeah. I mean, it's been a few people have said it in Beta Hazard 1 and 2, and I've always thought it was of lower setting enough to be fine. But this is where it's good to get feedback, because if it's not, then it's not a big deal to sort of almost drop it to the point where there is no strobing. I mean, the bullets will still fire in time with the music, so you'll still get that element, and the ships will still move in time with the music, but you won't. The flashing part can just be taken out. So I guess a bullet would just always look the same no matter what the music's doing.
Yeah, I am actually, like I said, I'm not photosensitive to the point where, like other people might, where I get like seizures. But it's just I get I will get a headache if it goes on long enough and if it's bright enough. And so, but I'm okay with the bullet hells with the bright bullets and all the rest. But so I just said, okay, well, I'll turn it off and enjoy the game.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. No, I'll definitely look at that. Definitely.
So I was curious about how Spotify integrated into the map mode. I'm fascinated with the map mode. I love it so much. I'm ride or die for this new map mode. I love it so much. When I was playing it, I don't have a Spotify account, so when I was playing it, I just chose a bunch of random genres. It didn't load up the whole song though. Is that a thing? Like, do I need to sign up to a Spotify account to get like?
Yeah, you would. Yeah, well, there's a couple of things. One is, you need a Spotify account,
Okay.
but you can get a free one. Like 99.9% of the tracks in the Galaxy, you can just play for free.
Oh, so you have to actually
need
sign into Spotify. That was the problem.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. If you're getting if it's cutting off and it's.
If you don't have an account, it will just show previews. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
but I have an
Even with a
account.
free
but-
account.
Yeah, I have an account. I just hadn't signed in. So that was that was my failure. That was my failure. Okay. All right. Well,
The one thing that might happen on a free account is you will get ads. They don't happen like during songs. They might happen at the beginning.
I've not had that, and I think I know why. Is when I launch the browser, I do an embedded version of the track. And I don't think I've played a lot. I've never had an advert with it. So I think that dodges it by saying this is an embedded.
Shh.
Yeah, I know.
Don't tell them. Don't tell them. Shh.
Right, so wait, there's an embedded player?
Yeah. Yeah, when
Also,
you
if you enter it to someone else's like Galaxy thing, it embeds the player and you don't have to like drag it out from your own Spotify. I've not actually tried the campaign map because it seemed too convoluted for me.
It loads the track in a browser in an embedded version, and then you start the track, and then it starts the level in the game.
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah, it doesn't use the Spotify app. Yeah, it just does it in a browser. But someone came up with a really good idea as well, which was to be able to choose the service that you want, and then instead of launching Spotify, you just stick the details of the track and launch a search in YouTube Music or Apple Music, and normally the top one will be the right song anyway, so you just play on that. And I thought it was a great idea because then it meant you would then be able to transition from, even though all the data is based on Spotify, the player that you actually use in Open Mic can be whichever one you want. I thought that was a really good idea and something that I want to.
Oh,
I need to put that.
I feel like it will take some fiddling throughout the early active period, and I feel that's the most effort.
If you could do that though, because I use Apple Music, if you could do that, that would be. I mean, I don't have a problem like having a free Spotify account as long as I'm not giving them money. But
you're not even giving them adverts either, so you double.
Even better. Yay! Nothing's going to Joe Rogan. Woohoo! All right.
Wasn't Joe Rogan booted off Spotify, or am I like?
No, he wasn't. A lot of people left, including myself, because of him. Not to get political. Not to get too political, but so okay, that explains a lot.
I was just getting my facts straight. Okay,
no, it's fine. I'm gonna create some more galaxies now that I know this, because so far I've only been using my local tracks like the original games. But now that, but you have this amazing browser for the map that lets you choose all these artists and all these genres and everything, and it really. I was just playing with it. I just created a map based on like rock and power pop and a couple other things, and it created this really great map with all these great songs. I just didn't know I needed to log in. I was like, "What is happening?" But now,
that definitely helped.
God darn it!
So, a question about that actually. You can play together on the same map with your friends.
Oh, good point.
How is that supposed to work with sharing the galaxy?
So this is where the game has got a database of 5 million Spotify tracks built into it. So when you create a galaxy using that data, you can in the galaxy creation window, you can tick Spotify tracks only, which then makes that galaxy shareable. Because if I go, here's a load of Spotify artists that I'm going to play with, I can then share that with you because you've got the same database. So it wouldn't obviously work with your local music because everyone's got different local music. But if you create a Spotify only galaxy, then it's all shareable. And then once you publish it, it comes up with an ID which you give to your friends and they can join. And then because the state of the galaxy is saved in a database, you can have, in theory, an unlimited number of people in that galaxy all playing together. And I've stress tested it up to, I think, about 40 or 50 people all going nuts in a single galaxy, and it seems to work. No doubt during early access we'll find some issues with it. But I thought it was quite an interesting sort of place to be with in terms of what to do with that as an idea, because they're like, well, we could have PvP galaxies, we could have PvE galaxies, we could have factions in galaxies. There's loads of stuff that you could do with it. At the moment, it's just sort of an open sandbox where you can join a galaxy and you go around capturing stuff, but there's no more structure to it than that at the moment. But I'm quite looking forward to adding some more interesting rules to make it more playable.
Okay, that sounds amazing.
Ownership is whoever gets number one of the leaderboard.
Yeah,
and if you get it for your faction, then supposedly your faction takes it.
Yeah, and because Biohazard 2, I had the sort of challenge mode where it had a track that you had to get the high score on within 4 hours or 24 hours. For Biohazard 3, I wanted to do galaxy challenges where you go, this galaxy is going to exist for, say, a week or a month, and during that time there's some sort of battle goes on in that galaxy, and at the deadline, one side wins and one side loses, and all the winners get something cool. And I thought that'd be quite good as well, is having these sort of temporary galaxies that get created by the game, and then it creates a rule set, and then you join and try and, whatever it happens to be that week, you try and achieve the goals.
So kind of like the rundown in GTFO.
What's that?
I've not played that.
Okay, it was at least when it was planned, it was going to have some kind of weekly campaign levels that switches around every now and then.
Yeah, along those lines, yeah.
Okay,
so the sort of thing where you might have special rules like certain extra weapons are banned from being equipped. Sort of like the shadow challenges that you had in.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. There's so much that you could do with it. I think that's where it can be pretty interesting. And that all comes back to, I was going to say about the Spotify stuff, is those 5 million tracks. What I was doing was keeping an eye on every time someone played a Spotify track in Biohazard 2, I wrote it to a database. So I had a list of the typical music that Biohazard 2 players like. I then used the Spotify API to say, give me information about these artists and artists like them, and then stick it in the database. So I'm hoping that the 5 million tracks is not arbitrary. It's actually based on the sort of music that current players actually like. So hopefully it won't all be just weird stuff. I'll tell you what though, there's after trawling Spotify, some of the music that comes back is when there's a list of something like 2,000 different genres, and some are so weird. Just like one album with this one genre, and that's it. Like maypole dancing, sort of mixed with heavy metal genre, and you're like going, what?
Don't say what. I just tested it.
So
Amazing.
So now I want to talk about the ships, because the ships are now procedural, and you can get new ships, at least in the galaxy mode, when you conquer a planet.
That works in arcade mode too.
Oh, really?
In arcade mode, it's when you complete a song,
Yep.
and it's song dependent.
Oh,
I
that's
can
great.
tell, like, it seems like the same hash that's used to like determine what song is what is used to build the ship from it. Is that correct? Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
Okay,
The
that's
hash,
delightful.
yeah, the hash of the song is used in all sorts of places because it's really useful. One is the leaderboard. I use that hash value to save the high scores for that track, and then I use that hash value to generate the ship, which I don't know, man. I can't even. So 60. Is it 32 byte number would probably give you more combinations than there are atoms in the universe. I think probably way more than that. So the number of ships that you could potentially have is, almost essentially infinite. I would have thought.
And in campaign mode, that becomes especially tricky because your mothership, which I also want to talk about at some point, your mothership can only hold so many ships. At least at
Yeah,
first.
you can add more hangars.
You can add more hangars.
Absolutely, and then upgrade them too.
You can upgrade each hangar to hold more ships as well as having more hangars. Oh, that's amazing.
Didn't notice that.
Quantum storage, baby.
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't. People love to collect the ships. I mean, some people have got a collection of over 1,000 ships, and I didn't.
Wow.
Although, I wanted to have the mothership, and here's where your ships live, but I actually made the hangars super cheap and easy to upgrade. So if you want to go crazy and have a massive collection, I don't want to stop people. Go you can't. There's not enough space. You need to throw it away. So yeah, I wanted to keep that barrier low, so you're not getting annoyed with. I've got this beautiful ship I've just unlocked, and I can't keep it, or I've got to get rid of a different one to make room for it. There's a little bit of that at the start, but it's so easy to collect a bit of scrap and then upgrade your hangar and add more that it shouldn't be an issue. I mean, I think I've got 5 double upgraded, fully upgraded hangars, and I've got room for about 400 ships. So that'll keep me going for a while.
Yeah, that sounds like me. I would catch them all. Basically, I would just want to catch them.
Yeah.
The trick is to upgrade when you are about 3 or 4 away from your maximum.
Yeah.
That way, you're able to spend the scrap elsewhere and not worry too much about it.
Yeah.
And how do you get scrap? Remind me. How do you get scrap?
When you blow up some of the biggest ships, they'll leave these little black, sort of shiny blobs of metal, and then you can just collect those up.
Oh, is that what that is? I was avoiding it.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people are going, I was trying not to hit it. I thought they were asteroids. So this is whether I should change the way that looks, or just again.
I will admit there were many times where there were things that were like shining blue and gold, and I'm like, should I take those or should I avoid those? Like, I was not really clear on what was a projectile that was going to kill me and a collectible.
Yellow is the fusion fuel, and blue is the full drive fuel, and then the black is the scrap.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I was not very clear, so I was like, what do I avoid and what do I take? I don't know.
Yeah.
And from what I saw, you only get scrap when you are in arcade mode, but you get the other 2 as well when you're in galaxy mode.
Yeah, well, here's something I can run past you then, because I've been trying to figure this one out. Is the mothership is global, so when you start a new galaxy, you don't obviously have to start with a new mothership. That makes sense. Like, I built this cool mothership up. I don't have to do it again.
Yeah. You can have you can have multiple galaxies, but only one mothership.
That's
correct.
Pretty great, actually. I like that.
Yeah. So, but say you're in a galaxy, right, and you need fuel to move, and you've collected some fuel. Should that fuel be for that galaxy only, or if you went to another galaxy that you're playing, is that fuel usable between galaxies, or is it fixed into the galaxy that you collected?
From my brain, it sounds like since the ship itself is persistent, the fuel should also be persistent. That's how my brain. That's how my
galaxies.
Yeah. Like if you're because the fuel, the way I see it, it's kind of like a multi-dimensional spaceship, and the fuel that you take is coming with you. That's how my brain works, at least.
That's interesting because this is where it's like, you know, good game design versus sort of being sort of anal about how it sort of what makes sense. See, to me, it's like, oh, because this spaceship is in this galaxy, then the fuel you collect in that galaxy should only belong to that galaxy. When you go to a different one, you've got a different fuel. But the scrap, the problem is the scrap is global.
The scrap is
persistent. Hang on. So I've got one resource that's global and two other resources that are per galaxy, and it just feels wrong to me.
It does.
I'm struggling.
Yeah, that does seem. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that does seem like, why aren't they all persistent? They should either like all be persistent or not.
Well, this is it. Then I just sort of go, like, I'm just being too anal about that. I need to just go. The reason I sort of stuck to it that way is because in my mind I was thinking that there might be parts of a planetary system where you can collect all the uranium fuel, another part where you can collect the sort of fold crystals, and that because at the moment they're just distributed evenly. But I quite like the idea of, like, no, maybe near the sun that you get more fold crystals, or further out where it's cold you get more uranium, or something along those lines. And I was thinking, because if you could sort of farm it in one galaxy and then use it in another, it felt a bit like cheating. Like you could have one galaxy where I just farm the uranium and then hop over to another galaxy and then use it. I thought, it feels a bit, but I'm like, maybe I'm just really overthinking it and go, it doesn't matter. If you want to do that, that's fine.
It really doesn't matter. I mean, as long as the player's having fun.
Exactly. This is...
Well, let me throw an idea here, just as a thought. If you're going to have weekly challenges with the galaxies, then maybe in that case, whatever you have fuel-wise doesn't carry over. So you do have to earn it within that galaxy, but it's only within that challenge. Otherwise, it's untouched.
Okay. Yeah.
I could see that working as more of everybody starts it on fair footing because it's a challenge.
Well, if it was a challenge, wouldn't they maybe start at the very basic mothership as well? Like not even your personal mothership. You'd start off with like a basic model and upgrade it through the challenge.
What I mean is that when you're in that galaxy, if it's a galaxy that's just been generated for the challenge, then you'd still have to earn the fuel to move, unless you are carrying it with you. If you play on your own and then you join an online galaxy, you shouldn't have to, when you're joining with your friends, you shouldn't have to grind in the same planetary system in order to be able to move out and start joining them. If you see what I'm getting at.
You've hit it right. That's the bit I don't like. There's a few people who've said, I've gone to a planet, so there's only one planet in the system. I'm having to play the song 5 or 6 times just to get the fuel to get out. And you go, I don't like that. That's no good. This is like, you go, I like the idea of collecting resources and using them, but you absolutely do not want to have to keep playing the same track just for that reason. And if the resources were more universal, you could just drop into arcade mode, for example, and go, I'll just play a bit in arcade, get some fuel, and then go back to my galaxy.
Oh, that's what you're saying as well.
Yeah, well, if it's an online challenge, it does seem to make sense to ring fence it in that case.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. Like I love the idea of grinding arcade mode to get out of a pickle or make galaxy mode a little maybe less challenging or something. Or you can get around the galaxy a little easier. But yeah, the challenge, like you said, should be completely fenced off. I think that should be completely fenced off in its own thing entirely. Like that could be part of the challenge. Is you're starting with this specific mothership. Well, how do you cope in this galaxy with this mothership? Like it's not the one you've tweaked, you know. I
never even thought of that. That's actually quite. I mean, you could have either you'll start with the basic ship and you can get the biggest, or maybe in the galaxy mode, here's a mothership that's of some size, and you've just got to use it. Not
pre-generated.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have to deal with this galaxy with this mothership for this week. So it doesn't even touch your stuff. It's completely a separate thing.
Yeah. I like that. That sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah, and then everyone starts on that footing. Everyone starts with that.
Yeah.
And goes from there. Everyone starts on the same, like from the same starting line, basically.
Yeah, definitely.
That sounds great. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. That does sound good. Yeah.
You know, when I started Galaxy mode, I started and I put myself in a system where I thought, okay, well, there's only one track here. I didn't realize when I first started that your jump range was going to be that limited. And so I ended up in that same rut that you just mentioned about you have to grind the same planet or planets in just a small area before you can actually move out. Yeah. So I generated a second galaxy and I didn't have that problem because I was more judicious about where I started.
Oh, well, good for you. I'm glad you did that because but there you've just exposed the thing from a gameplay point of view you absolutely do not want. You don't want to be stuck somewhere grinding, because it's you're supposed to got these galaxies to explore. It's great. I don't want to be stuck here just going around in circles. I mean that a solution would be to be able to drop into arcade mode, collect some resources, also have less systems with only one planet. It's not about making. It needs to be fun. And you go and explore. I don't want people to stuck in the corner of this huge galaxy and not go anywhere, and then quit out because they're annoyed with it.
Yeah, I got stuck in my galaxy yesterday, and I didn't really know how to get out. But I didn't really understand the fuel system, and I didn't know you could replay a planet in order to get more fuel. I did not know that. But now that I do, I feel like a little more confident being able to. I'll probably just generate a new one with Spotify tracks this time after I frickin' sign into Spotify.
The trick that I found, Brian, is to use arcade mode to get a lot of scrap. And then you upgrade your mothership, and then you jump back into Galaxy mode, and then you jump back in with the upgraded.
Oh, you can do that? You can. So wait, you can from the main menu, you could play arcade mode, gather scrap that way, use it to upgrade your mothership from the main menu, then jump into Oh, wow. Okay.
Yep.
Well, that's terrific.
That's what I ended up doing.
That's terrific.
And
okay.
Very effective.
That's a great. That is the kind of gameplay loop I love, where you have multiple ways to deal with, like, I'm low on fuel. I'll just, play a couple of fun tracks to get some scrap or something, and then jump back in. That sounds
Granted, you're not getting the full fuel or uranium in arcade mode. Not at the moment, anyway. But if that is an option later, then that is absolutely going to work for anyone who's stuck, because then they don't have to just grind the same planets. In one solar system, they can just go into arcade mode, play whatever tracks they want to, and then come back in with an upgraded ship, and then jump out of wherever they were, quote unquote, stuck.
Yeah, definitely.
Can I just say, I know this may be patently obvious to people who've played the previous games, but did you do the artwork yourself, or do you have an artist that did it? Because I just no one yet has complimented you on the artwork, like the 3-dimensional artwork, especially. And
you're absolutely right.
It's one of the first things I notice when I'm playing a game, and I guess I know a lot of people say, "Oh, well, it doesn't matter how the game looks, as long as the gameplay is fun." But that's something that, when it's so eye-catching like it is with this game, and you look at a planet and you say, "Well, that looks like it was just taken by the Hubble Space Telescope." I really liked it, and I was just curious who does your artwork.
Sort of me. So I've pretty much done it myself. The 3D spaceships are ships that I've bought off CG Trader. So you can buy packs of spaceships. So they're made and textured, which is great. But what then I do is take them into Blender. I cut them into pieces, then label the joints, bring them into Unreal, and then throw them at the procedural generation system. So I can sort of label this is a cockpit. It's got positions for wings here, here, and here. it's got positions for struts and engines. So there's markers on all these objects where you could potentially clip things in. And then the procedural system will go, right, start with a random cockpit. I'll put a random wing here, and it's essentially recurses down, puts things at different angles, different scales, and different items, and bolts together like a unique spaceship. So I didn't do the art. So the 3D art is done by someone else, which I purchased, and then chopped up. The planetary stuff is just mainly high-res textures of, I don't know if I really want to tell you, but like mud, marble, just concrete, and then I put it into Photoshop, turned it into a polar coordinate texture, which then means it can get mapped to a sphere, and then did a lot of layering to sort of mix, 3 or 4 different textures together in a shader, and then put a cloud layer on, and then an atmosphere layer to then make a planet, which took a long time. I mean, there's loads of stuff on how to make planets in Unreal, but a lot of them are really complicated. Like they look great, but it's not very good for real-time rendering. So I had to try and simplify all that and get something that looked reasonably good, but could be rendered in real time.
Well, it certainly is effective, and I thought it looked spectacular.
Oh, thanks.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty surprised. I like that you did that. Honestly, I wished more people would like do that. Just this use of randomizing certain assets as for gameplay mechanics is simply great. I really got to applaud you.
Thanks. I mean, to be honest, when I first went 3D and I got all the bits of ships and chopped them up and put them together, the first one I did looked like a mess, and I was like, oh no, this is not going to work. But with a bit of tweaking and messing around, I'm sort of genuinely surprised myself when I look at a spaceship and go, actually looks really good. It looks sort of designed, even though it's essentially random bits thrown together. I mean, it's, the algorithm itself's been tweaked a lot to try and generate something that looks designed. But it's one of those weird, so it's a bit like the Galaxy thing as well. Sometimes you write a bit of code thinking, well, this is what I want, but I'm not 100% sure I'm going to achieve it. And sometimes you look and go, actually, it's pretty good that. Even though, you sort of surprise yourself a bit that you can get certain things working. I mean, I love, things like genetic algorithms, procedurally generated stuff, and recursive algorithms, and all that side of things. That's why I try and throw it all into my games, because I just find it fascinating what an algorithm can create with a bit of thought and a bit of tweaking. It's pretty amazing. And obviously, I'm not really an artist, so I rely on my code to sort of generate the art for me, which is sort of the approach I've taken.
Well, no complaints here.
No complaint. It's
absolutely not.
Julie was right to bring that up. It is an absolutely gorgeous game, and I do love the ship designs. They're just bonkers in the best way. Now, I did want to ask about something that came up for me, at least, is the leveling system, the kind of light RPG system, because it looks like you level as a player, but also your ships level up as well.
Yes,
it looks like. How does that progression work exactly?
In Beat Hazard 2, each ship had. It was just a level. That was it. And the level really didn't mean anything. It was just a way of, this ship is now elite level, but it didn't actually give you anything. But there were 4 missions, and if you did 2 of those missions, it would unlock a module, and that module you could then add to any other spaceship to tweak the way it either flew or handled or the weapons it had. This time I want to sort of make it a bit more interesting so that as you level your ship up, it does have some sort of meaning, and that there are, at the moment we've got the basic weapon slots where you can decide which weapons go in which slots, but I really like the idea of if you add a certain weapon, you actually see it on the spaceship. Like at the moment, if you add, say, micro missiles to the ship, it doesn't visually change, but it'd be cool if you could see some bolt-on missile pods with loads of missiles sticking out of them. And the same with being able to, say, tweak the handling. You might get some extra fins appear on it, or it changes in some way. And then as you level the ship up and it becomes, say, an elite ship, I had the concept of elite ships through challenges in Beat Hazard 2, and people really like them. But the only way you could get an elite ship is through the challenge. And people want to go, I want to be able to level my ship up to elite, do through gameplay rather than through the challenge system. I think that's a great idea, so I'd like to put that in. In general, yeah, I'd like to make it. I sort of want to write a system where you can sort of find either upgrades or artifacts on planets or in galaxies, and then somehow combine or craft them to then create weapons that you put on the ships. Not fully got it clear in my head yet how it's going to work, but I think that something along those lines would be, I think, really interesting.
Yeah, to make the progression feel even more meaningful. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and then it's that. Also, I wanted to make it so. I'm a massive fan of Borderlands, and the gun system in Borderlands. I mean, that's almost where I got some of the ideas from Beat Hazard from. Is all these guns that get generated, and some of them are especially done. But the problem is that you get a lot of guns that are completely useless. And he's actually and I actually found that once you find a really good gun, you just sort of stick with it. And he's actually trying to come up with some game ideas that actually sort of went the other way, where you might have a favourite ship, but then there's a point where you've sort of maxed it out and you might swap to another ship. So you might have a whole host of favourite ones. It's a bit tricky to sort of balance because, but if you know what I mean, you want, with all this rich content that could be created, you sort of want people to use it and not just keep throwing them away. But trying to come up with systems that sort of lean in that direction. Possibly even, having certain ships for certain circumstances might work. Yeah, still thinking about it.
So by that, do you mean something along the lines of, say, a Mosquito ship? Because they are smaller, they're fast, they might lean toward a certain play style that you could maybe upgrade with specific weapons to lean even further into that specialization, whereas opposed to, say, Brute, where you definitely want to lean into doing extra damage or having more beam slots, for example. That sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's also, say, for example, I quite like the idea of adding asteroid fields into the galaxy mode, so you can see an asteroid belt. But I'm like, well, because we've already got asteroids in the game, maybe certain levels are just loads of asteroids, and then maybe they will come at the same direction, but it's like a different sort of experience. And maybe that's where you go, actually, I need to take my Mosquito ship into that mess because I can dodge around the asteroids better. And it's sort of, maybe that try and introduce some different sort of types of level which go, which different ships do well at. It's a bit tricky, don't want to come up with too many different variations, but yeah, that sort of feeling that a certain ship is good at certain things, and you can tailor your ship to craft it in that direction.
David,
I like where that's going.
Yeah, David, I think you were saying you had a question?
Yeah, first of all, I'm very nervous to actually speak with a developer of Beat Hazard, so...
Oh, stop.
I need to breathe.
I'm just the guy.
Okay. So,
don't worry, it's just an Englishman.
He's just this guy, He's just...
First of all, I just need to get the question out of the way. For Beat Hazard 1, when they came up with the idea, did you take an inspiration from AudioSurf at the time?
Well, it's almost the opposite. The game that inspired Beat Hazard was actually Geometry Wars. And I loved Geometry Wars. It was one of the first games, twin-stick shooters I ever played. And I remember the first time I played it, I was like, this is crazy. I can't even control it. I thought it's rubbish. Well, I gave it another go. Actually, I'm getting into this. And it just the visuals of that were great. And I think and one day I was just sitting down and I thought, Wouldn't it be great if Geometry Wars had music going through it, and the music changed the visuals, and it was like, oh, and that's where Beat Hazard came from. And I remember then looking up music-driven games, and I saw this game called Audio Surf, and my heart sank because I was like, oh, it's already been done. And then when I looked at it and found that it was like, it wasn't the same game at all, I was like, oh, great. But then it was also inspiring to see that somebody had come up with a similar idea and it had been successful. And so that was the sort of origins of Beat Hazard, was Geometry Wars, and then Audio Surf sort of G'd me on thinking, I can make this game and people would want to play it. And that's where it all came from.
Also, when I played Beat Hazard 1, I was like, oh, this is great. It's Audio Surf, but with guns! Pretty much.
Yeah. Because Audio Surf, I don't know I think it must have been one of the original music-driven games. I don't know if there was anything before that. And I even used the same audio library that he did, because I downloaded his game and thought, what's he using to essentially, from a technical point of view, grab the sound and analyze it? And I saw that he uses Bass Audio Library, which is then, all right, I'll go and grab that. And and that's what Beat Hazard 1 was built on. In fact, it's still in Beat Hazard 3. I still use it to do all the audio analysis. So it's come from the original game.
That's very cool. I have another question here, because while I really like top-down space shooters, I'm not that good at it. Let's just say that. There are two 2D top-down space shooters that I hold very dear to my heart. Those are Raptor, Call of the Shadows, and Turian. The reason for being is that you don't die in one shot. Can we get something like that in here?
Yeah, we've had some discussions about this. Traditionally, Beat Hazard's been a one-shot kill game. With the procedurally generated spaceships, especially the big ones, someone was suggested the idea of bits coming off the ship and it becoming more disabled rather than just dying outright. I think if you were going to go down that route, though, it'd be quite a big change.
I can imagine.
The fundamental game is. But it'd be almost, this is sort of a wider topic in a way, but music-driven games in general, I think Beat Hazard 3 is probably going to be the last Beat Hazard, but it's not to say I couldn't do Beat Hazard Tower Defense or Beat Hazard, racing game, or some other a music-driven game in a different genre. You couldn't do it in this game, but you could actually, in thinking about it, do it in some sort of follow-up, or maybe you could do it in a
spin-off
different
of sorts. Same universe. Same.
Yes,
universe,
please.
but, yeah. I could see that. I could see that working.
That would be amazing.
A first-person rhythm shooter where you board the ships of Beat Hazard and capture them. That's what I want.
That'd be creepy.
Seriously, some kind of arena shooter. Well, that would be interesting.
Do you guys any Atari sort of computer fans? Do you go that far back?
I still have an Atari 800 and Atari 800 XL.
Oh,
yeah.
really? That's right. So,
my first machine was Pong back in 1970 something.
Because I don't know if you know it then, because on the Atari 800 there's a space game called Dreadnought Factor, and I absolutely love this game. And there's spaceships which were like essentially 10 screens long, and you'd start at the bottom and you'd weave your way up, and you'd have to try and take out all the turrets, and slowly you can take multiple runs at this spaceship and you try and cripple it and then destroy it before it got to the planet and blew it up. In fact, you could just look it on YouTube probably. In fact, it might not even be there, but if you look at Dreadnought Factor, you'll probably find it somewhere. And it was like, this game's always stuck in my head, and one of the things I felt like I wanted to do, like Beat Hazard Dreadnoughts, where you got these absolutely massive spaceships that you fly over and weave in and out of and take out to music, and maybe you do it as a team, or maybe even takes like a week to blow up this huge thing. But that idea of taking on something just absolutely, it's a bit like the old Death Star thing, where you sort of just unimaginable size. But instead of just blowing up with one shot, you've got to take it down over, a lot of time.
Wow, yeah, no, this looks real. I never played this. It came out in '83 for the.
If you got an emulator, have a go.
I will.
It plays well now. It's really good.
It looks great. It looks like
it was a great
it
game.
came out for the Atari 5200, the 8-bit systems, and Intellivision back in 1983. And this looks really freaking cool. I'm looking at it on Moby Games.
It's a great game. Yeah,
I played it already. It was a really great game. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
I could totally see this being a Beat Hazard spinoff. Each section of the battleship.
You still have the twin stick, but you are flying over the dreadnought.
And each section is a song.
Yeah. And that's where, because I'm now on. I mean, I assume you guys have seen how capable Unreal 5 is. I'm like, ooh, Unreal 5, big spaceships, lots of shooting. Sounds good to me.
Yeah, even as top down, it doesn't even have to be fully 3D.
Yeah.
You can still be top down and doing the same sort of gameplay.
Yeah, definitely. I think you keep it essentially like 2D playing aspect, but over some. Because I think as soon as you go sort of cockpit view, it completely changes, doesn't it? It's first person. I much rather have the third person view, so I get to see the cool spaceship instead of just sort of flying past it really quickly.
I do have one question, and it's actually not what everybody thinks probably it's going to be, but this will show my ignorance because I'm a project manager, not a programmer. But Beat Hazard 2 is on Android. Is there any way that you'll ever have it Beat Hazard 3 on Android?
No, unfortunately. And the reason I say no is I did mobile ports and they're an absolute nightmare. Oh. And it's a real shame. It's a real shame. It's from a technical point of view, it's so painful. And even now I get people, I've bought your game and when I run it, it runs in landscape mode instead of portrait. And I'm like, well, that's because the Android OS has changed and now my game doesn't work properly with it. Like Beat Hazard 1, which was written 13 years ago, still runs on Windows right now. It's like, whereas if you try and run a game that's a couple of years old on Android or iOS and it doesn't work properly, and it's constant battle to try and keep the thing compatible. And also, I mean, I think Unreal Engine's pretty good on mobile. I don't know whether it would deal well with my game or whether it would just chug along. But it's just they make development so difficult, and a part of me is like, well, I could either write a new game or I could spend 3 or 4 months trying to port over to Android and iOS. And the other problem is OpenMic doesn't work on mobile phones,
yeah, that's not gonna work.
You won't get Galaxy mode and all that stuff. And they've even made it really difficult. Again, it goes back to how many people have MP3s on the phone. Like, it's getting fewer and fewer. And even people that do have MP3s on their phone, for some reason, it's really difficult to access them. And sometimes it seems to work, and other times it doesn't. And for the life of me, someone will go, I've got an Android such phone, it doesn't work. I'm like, I have no idea why it doesn't work, and I've got no idea how to debug that unless I go and buy that phone. And it's really difficult, and it's a real shame, because I like playing games on my phone. And the phones these days are so capable, but it's just, because I'm just one guy doing it. It sucks the time out of you. So probably not. In fact,
well, I guess that's because one of the first questions I ask myself is like, well, hey, I wonder if this can be played mobile. And I have a lot of MP3s on my phone and they work just fine. And I guess I had visions of like turning this on to open mic and playing it during a boring business meeting and see how it would flash to all the. But I thought the only reason it came to mind is because I didn't notice that the second one was on, and I haven't actually tried it. But can I also ask you, because sometimes it's like the answer is just, it sounded good, but sometimes there's a story behind it. Why Cold Beam?
Oh, well, the story behind that is try and find a website that's not already been taken. It was like
Totally fair.
literally,
Oh man.
I was like, right,
Oh,
first of all,
man.
single word, forget about it. Like such and such game, no. Then so I wrote down what I thought were some quite cool words and just stuck them together in different combinations and just kept banging them into websites. And loads of them came up. And Cold Beam just I thought that sounds quite good, and it didn't exist anywhere. So
Nice.
that's where it came from.
Well,
Yeah.
I certainly understand that because the question I get on Twitch a lot is, "Oh, why Joolee?" I said that's the only spelling of my name that it would take.
I ran into a domain the other day in my course of my work that was only 2 letters. And I'm like, how? So I looked up the who is on it, and they registered it in like 94. Like, oh yeah, that's how.
Yeah.
The only way.
If we'd known then what we know now,
Oh my God, right?
we'd all be rich. Yeah, I know. It seems so obvious now. Yeah, register all obvious words.
Like
That
I
was later.
tried to get my name on for my domain, and I tried to get a domain of my name, and someone got it 2 years before I even thought about it. Because there are a lot of Brian Rubens out there. A lot of Brian Rubens out there. And some guy.
It's only going to get harder, isn't it?
Oh my God. It's just, that's why all these company names now are like Skeezy, SK3EZZYIE or some, like all these crazy ass, because they have to.
Well, you never know if it's like, oh, well, my uncle built cold beam lasers or something, So.
Yeah, the weird thing that stuck in my mind where that name come from was I'm a big Battlefield fan, and it was Frostbite, wasn't it? And for some reason the thing of cold and I was sort of thinking of a cold laser exactly that, and cold beam sort of, but that's where it sort of came from, was Frostbite, and I was like writing words down related to that because I thought that sounded cool. But yeah, it was just more of a sort of a search for something unique that sounded reasonably good.
First 2 things I thought about was cold beam lasers. Oh, beam dog. Oh,
What?
No, Cold Beam is a cool name. I'm shocked you were able to get it. That is a cool That is a cool 2 words.
I ought to add it to the game. Really, this should be a cold beam weapon.
Oh God, yeah. Why isn't there? Oh my God, to freeze enemies.
Yeah, that'd be quite cool, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
That could be an artifact that you find. A new weapon type.
The cold beam.
Yeah, it could be like at the center of a galaxy where there's a black hole. You've got the cold beam alien technology or something like that.
And there's a guy that gives you and there's a guy that gives you 1 wish, but you have to get there first, or whatever the hell that was.
Maybe it's stupid, but I really liked the name and I was curious.
No,
and
that's a good question. No, that's a great question.
Every now and then we've had developers on, and there really is a story behind it.
And Julie, I appreciate you asking those questions, because I'm always like, I want to talk about the map. I want to talk about the game. I want to talk about the ships. And I really appreciate that you're the one that thinks of, I want to talk about the company. And I want to talk about the person.
See, I haven't asked this at this point because, we're way past time.
No, I don't think she's going to. No, we already talked about mobile.
We're not talking about mobile. See, the other thing I usually ask is the kind of thing that, some people just wake up and say, oh, hey, yeah, I know video games, and I happen to know one person who's really high up in the game development company as a senior producer, and he started out as an ichthyologist, so you never know.
Yeah, I mean, loads of people come from all over the place, don't they, these days? There are lots of people going, I'm jacking it in, I'm going to be an indie developer. And off you go.
Well, what got you started?
Oh, I've been writing games since I was 10. I started on ZX80, and then my first game, in fact, you can look this up as well, was River Valley on the Atari 800. You can actually download that and run it on emulator.
And then, so I did that. I was just bedroom coding. Managed to get a couple of things published. Did computing at university, and then I got a phone call out of the blue from one of my friends who'd graduated saying, "Do you want to come and write games?" I went, "Yeah, all right." And we worked for a company called DID, which wrote Flight Simulator.
Wait a minute. Wait, stop. Wait, hold on. Oh my God. EF 2000 is my favorite flight sim. Did you work on that one? Did you work on that?
Yeah.
What?
Well, that's a plot twist.
What did you just say?
No way.
No way now.
Okay. I'm all right. Okay, I'm okay.
I'm dying.
Hey, it's not me who's hyperventilating now.
You guys know this stuff. Most people I talk to never heard of any of this sort of thing because it's so old.
Oh no.
Monumental. We're all monumental fucking nerds here.
And Brian spent several months earlier this year just playing classic flight sims.
Yeah.
From the 80s and 90s. So that's included in that list.
TFX, EF 2000, Total Air War, F-22, ADF. I've got them all.
Yeah. I was the lead designer on Total Air War. That was good. I love them.
What? Oh,
thank you for your service.
Stop.
Oh my God.
Okay, we got to start asking this earlier in the podcast. Okay, guys, from now on, we have to start because holy, oh God, because EF 2000, I think, is probably the best mix of accessibility and playability and replayability of any flight sim, I think. It's so magical. And to hear that, okay, I'm all right. I'm okay.
I apologize for not bringing up sooner.
No, do not apologize. We got to ask this.
One of the first things I always do when we have a guest is I go out there and I say, okay, who's the person? What's their history? Where did they start out? Sometimes I can find a lot. And of course, I found the Moby games. But, it's like, yeah, wow, hey.
Yeah, it was good times, that. Good times.
Oh my God. No, see, a lot of developers we talk to don't go back that far. And
yeah, I'm a bit, because funny, because someone said the other day I'm a veteran game designer. I've been doing it for 12 years. I'm like, actually, I've been doing it for like 30.
Oh my
so
God.
I don't know. I mean, veteran doesn't necessarily mean time, obviously, but I thought it made me feel really old. But I thought, yeah, I mean, this is why I like this chatting to people that have got a bit, like go all the way back to the Atari days and stuff. They got proper. There's such a history, isn't there?
Oh my God, there's so much history. Yeah. Earlier this year, I played through a bunch of old flight sims, and now I'm doing it every Friday. I started with F-19, Stealth Fighter, the Microprose game, and I'm eventually going to do EF 2000. That's on my list.
Ones, I played. Yeah, I used to play those as well. I used to love those.
Yeah, still do. Oh my God, they hold up so well.
Yeah, and I used to be a proper, and obviously after working at DID, I was a proper weapon. I knew all the different aircraft, different weapons. And there's crazy stories. I went to work at the Defence Research Agency in Malvern. Actually, I don't know if I can tell you this.
Say no more. Say no more.
Yeah, that's enough. That's fine. That's fine. That's enough. Oh my God. Okay. oh my God. Okay. We have to, Julie, we have to try and remember to start asking this form of question earlier in the show, because the problem that there is, if we had asked this earlier in the show, the whole show would have derailed into EF 2000 / Total Air War, Total Air War talk. And that's
I can come back and do it.
Maybe because oh my God, because I mean I have all the DID games, even Eurofighter Typhoon and the expansion Icebreaker. Yes.
Yeah.
Not as good as EF 2000, but not bad. Just came out at the wrong time, sadly. Oh my God. As soon as you mentioned digital image design, I'm like, oh my god, oh my god. I'll tell you what, it is also hard to find people who worked on stuff back in those days. Like
it was funny. I can introduce you to a lot of them because all the guys that I used to work with at DID, we went through various phases of being bought out, being made redundant, and then making new companies. And we all sort of, because we knew each other, we sort of all stuck together. I mean, we've sort of fragmented quite a lot now, but there's a lot of people that, who, in fact, Don Whiteford, who was the producer on EF 2000, now has got a company called Nomad Games, and he's doing Talisman digital board games.
What?
The guys that worked with him, Rob Anderson is the guy who worked on EF 2000. And a couple of other guys who came in a bit later. Some of the artists, a guy called Andy Bates still there, Donna Jennett's still there. There's loads of them. All the F2000 lot. A lot of them are still doing game dev.
Oh my god, please invite them to our Discord. We would love to talk to them about all these old flight sims, because
literally every single one.
A lot of us, we're not all just space game fans. There's a lot of crossover between our community and like older flight sims and whatnot. We all love those old flight sims, and DID made, like, I think DID, Microprose, and Digital Integration are probably my favorites.
What's the current? Because this is like the irony is doing games all the time is I don't get to play many, and I was chatting to someone because Total Air War's got a special place for me because of how it all came about and how I worked on it. But it's one of these things like this dynamic campaign thing. Is something that I reckon. Do people do that at the moment? Because I'm sure I could do a dynamic campaign, but just with spaceships instead of aircraft.
Oh,
and I thought, I don't know whether that was a golden era of that sort of game, and it's sort of petered out, or whether
it did.
I don't know about.
Joystick games did peter out after the late 90s because I blame consoles, really.
Good point. Yeah.
But yeah, the dynamic campaign, especially of those 80s and 90s sims, like the DID campaigns and the digital integration campaigns and the Microprose campaigns. I mean, you only have a couple sims now that are doing it, like Wings Over Flanders Fields is amazing. The IL-2 games are getting better at this. Battle of Britain 2 does a very good job of this, but it's not as big a deal as it used to be, sadly.
I guess in those days it's because it's all single player, wasn't it? So you had to have the AI take over. Whereas these days you can throw it all online and have just massive.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, there's only like one or two space games that adopted a similar formula to like EF 2000 or Falcon. And that was Star Shatter, which was a space game that had a EF 2000 style dynamic campaign. But that was it. That's the only one. Yeah. So if you want to if you want to bring your flight sim expertise to the space sim realm and make a cockpit shooter with a dynamic campaign, I would love you forever. Oh my god! If you make Total Air War in space, holy freaking Jesus!
That's one of the things that was crossing my mind. Was like, wouldn't that be cool?
Yes, that would be very, very much so. Oh my god!
Yes, I buy it. How much money do you need?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Kickstarter when? Kickstarter. Yeah. I will back your to top tier level. If the top tier level includes a flight out to England to meet you, I'll do it. Absolutely. Oh my god. Okay, we got to wrap this up. We're going long, and there are people in Europe who it's getting late.
I just got one more question before we wrap up.
Go ahead.
There was mod support in 2. Will there be mod support in 3?
What sort of mods are in 2? You mean, Steam Workshop?
Yeah, Workshop so that you can bring in your own designs or
at the moment there isn't any, and that would probably be down to whether I do it or not. Is it's essentially just going to come down to the players. If there's a big demand for it, I'd put it in. And this is sort of the problem is, as we've been talking about Galaxy and all the different things you could do, is then where do I focus my time? Is should I do that? Should I do things like Workshop? So it's always, it's not like it can't be done. It's more as a solo developer. And this is why I want to do early access, is where I need to get a feel of where I should focus my time and what people want. And obviously that's sort of an organic thing as well, because people don't know what they want until they play it, and we sort of bounce ideas off each other. I mean, just chatting to you guys has given me some cool feedback and some bit of inspiration. So it's like, it would be slightly trickier in that would be as a 2, you just bring a sprite in and replace the ship with the sprite, because it's now all 3D. Is you could have it so if someone knows how to make 3D objects, you could just import that 3D object and have that as your ship, which might be cool. Or you could have essentially give all the pieces that the game uses to the player, and you go, well, you just bolt together the ship that you want, and that's your ship. So you don't necessarily.
So a ship editor.
The nice thing might be as a 2 though, you've got like cats, like someone's done a cat or a dinosaur, and you can have really crazy stuff like that as a spaceship. Whereas obviously if you just got the game content, you couldn't create a cat from it. But that's maybe just the limitation of of what it would have to be. But yeah, like I say, it's there's so much. It's sort of like, I find it crazy that essentially it's just twin stick shooter. It's really simple, but yeah, when you start pulling it apart, there's so much stuff that you could do with it. It's almost endless. And now, all I need to do is try and figure out, with people's feedback, what's the best, most useful, most popular sort of things to add to the game.
Well, I love the map mode. That's please more map mode stuff. That's my favorite. I love it so much. I want more. I want more there.
With the Workshop, I was gonna say just real quick, the fold mechanic makes things interesting. So that was the one concern that I had with importing ships, is how that was going to work with folding, because it wouldn't really be visually possible unless it's a 3D model. But I mean, you could have, if you want. I mean, you could if you really wanted to go down the sprite route and just let people bring sprites in, and just have 2 sprites. You go, well, I have a folded sprite and a non-folded sprite, and just blend between the 2 or something. You could. It sort of depends what people want. If you want to go down more the silly route and have cats flying around with lasers coming out of their eyes, then just import sprites. Whereas if you want to maybe a bit more serious, no, I actually want to build a 3D spaceship using the game parts. It's like you could do it at those 2 different angles, and I mean, people probably say they want both. Given the choice, they'll want both. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm having audio issues, so I got to start wrapping up. Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to come on to not only talk about Beat Hazard 3, but blow my mind about digital integration design. Oh my God. We have to talk to you more about that, by the way. Oh my God. We're going to pick your brain. So folks, Beat Hazard 3 comes out in early access next week on Monday, the 14th. So definitely keep an eye on it. It's amazing. It's got so much stuff to it, and it's got scalable difficulty. It's got a map mode. It's got an arcade mode. It's like you can play this forever, and it plays your songs. It plays Spotify songs. It's amazing. So next week on the show, we're probably going to do a topic. I don't know what it is yet. We're working on it, but we'll definitely do a fun topic next week. But that is going to do it for today. Chat, thank you very much for being as active as you were. You did great today. And with that, we'll see you next time. Have a great one, everyone.